Hello everyone dan salam sejahtera. At Open University Malaysia, we view education as a lifelong pursuit, guided by academic integrity and societal relevance. The Rise and Reflect 2025 initiative reflects our academic commitment to bridging scholarly insights with real-world understanding. This series offers a platform where diverse topics are explored thoughtfully, encouraging both intellectual engagement and public awareness. Through these initiatives, we affirm our role as a university that not only delivers knowledge but also nurtures critical reflection and meaningful dialogue. We invite all to benefit from this academic endeavor and to experience learning that continues to evolve with the needs of our time. Thank you.
A very good day to all our viewers. Welcome to our Rise and Reflect R&R 2025 webinar, a special initiative by the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Open University Malaysia, in conjunction with the 25th anniversary of Open University Malaysia OUM. This webinar series features insightful sessions and meaningful sharing by distinguished speakers from various fields with the aims of encouraging reflective thinking, critical discourse, and practical applications of knowledge in our everyday life. For today's session, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have with us Dr. Emiliano Bosio, professor at Toyo University, Japan, and adjunct associate professor at the Jeffrey Sachs Center on Sustainable Development, Sunway University, Malaysia. Dr. Bosio, ladies and gentlemen, he is a globally respected scholar who has made a significant contributions to the field of global citizenship education. He is actively involved in research on ethics, sustainability, and intercultural dialogue, particularly in higher education contexts, and frequently speaks on international platforms such as in UNESCO and the United Nations. Besides, he also serves as the director of Global Citizenship Education Interview Series and general editor for the Knowledge Conversation on Global Citizenship Education. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the title of today's presentation by Dr. Bosio is none other than Ethical Global Citizenship Education for Sustainability. Well, this is a timely and critical topic, especially we navigate the complex intersections of education, global ethics, and sustainability in an increasingly polarized world. In the field of political science, these still resonate deeply with ongoing debates on the democratic participation, soft power, ethical governance, and the role of the education in shaping responsible global citizens of addressing transnational challenges. Well, without further ado, let us begin the session. It's a great pleasure that I would like to invite Dr. Bosio to deliver the presentation. Dr. Bosio, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much for this excellent introduction. I'd like to share my PowerPoint slides. If you just give me a second, we put them up. Okay, so first of all, I want to say good afternoon, good evening, or even good morning, depending on your current location. And it is a real pleasure to discuss my work on ethical global citizenship education for sustainability at this excellent webinar organized by the Open University Malaysia. And I want to thank Director Ochin Keat for inviting me to deliver this talk. My name is Emiliano Bosio. I'm a professor of education based in Japan, and I have authored and co-authored multiple scientific articles in the field of global citizenship, focusing particularly on critical, transformative, ethical, and values-based pedagogy. And I've collaborated with scholars such as Carlos Alberto Torres, Henry Giraud, Youssef Akdid, Peter McLaren, and others. And so some of my recent books include Conversations on Global Citizenship Education, published by Routledge, Global Citizenship Education in the Global South by Broll, Value Creating Education, Teachers' Perceptions and Practice in Springer, The Emergence of the Ethical Engaged University, also in Springer, and the Ethical Global Citizenship Education, more recently in Cambridge University Press. In terms of international journal publications, these include Exploring Values and Knowledge in Global Citizenship Education with William Gaudelli and Carlos Alberto Torres, Global Citizenship Education at the Crossroads, also with Carlos Alberto Torres, Critical Pedagogy and Global Citizenship Education with Harry Giraud. And at the moment, I'm co-editing with Youssef Wagid, who is based in South Africa, and Silke Schreibarsch, who is based in Germany, a new special issue in the UNESCO International Review of Education titled Philosophical, Ethical, and Pedagogical Perspectives on Global Citizenship Education. And so, along with this recent special issue, I'm also the chief editor of the Oxford Handbook of Global Citizenship Education, to be published by Oxford University Press. And so particularly the Oxford Handbook will provide a thorough examination of global citizenship over recent decades, featuring diverse perspectives from both senior and emerging scholars across the Global South and the Global North. And so if you're interested, please feel free to get in touch.
Definitely.
I also want to mention that I'm the director of and editor of the Global Citizenship Education interview series, and this is a publicly available YouTube series aimed at exploring global citizenship education and has featured over 70 scholars worldwide. And for instance, some of the guests include James Banks, University of Washington, who is widely regarded as the father of multicultural education, Carlos Alberto Torres, UCLA, who has collaborated with Paulo Freire, Karen Pashbai, Manchester Metropolitan University, and Simon Marginson of Oxford University. And so the Global Citizenship Education interview series serves as what I call a video roadmap to key perspectives and experiences in global citizenship education. And it is designed to be a valuable resource for three primary audiences. The first is educators seeking to integrate theoretical understanding of global citizenship into their teaching practices. Then researchers new to the field of global citizenship looking for dynamic entry points into global citizenship education, but also general viewers who are interested in learning more about the history, philosophy, and practice of global citizenship education. And so today's guest lecture, today's webinar is presented by an educator who is based in Japan, but has collaborated with scholars worldwide, including those from both the Global North and the Global South. And so my experience includes working with academics in South Africa, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago, Malawi, Ghana, India, Zimbabwe, Mexico, Jordan, the United States, the United Kingdom, Israel, Canada, Brazil, Italy, South Korea, Malaysia itself, China, and Japan, where I'm currently based. And so in many ways, my teachings and my research publications and international lectures are informed by the valuable insights of the numerous scholars who have contributed to my interview series on global citizenship education. Now, an excellent outcome of my international collaboration with the experts across pedagogical fields is my book, Ethical Global Citizenship Education, published by Cambridge University Press. And this is available for purchase in the Intercultural Communication series on Cambridge University Press website, as well as on Amazon, Google Books, and other outlets. But what I want to emphasize is that this book is partially informed by the rich variety of conversation I had with international scholars in my Global Citizenship Education video interview series, but also that this specific book will be an influential work, not only because it is published by Cambridge University Press, a highly respected publisher, but also because it is written in a way that is accessible to both academics and general readers. Now, before we start, let me briefly share that in 2024, last year, I visited your wonderful country, specifically Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I had the pleasure of speaking at the Times Higher Education Asia University Summit. And the panel titled Innovative Approaches to Curriculum Design and Skill Development addressed key questions relevant to global citizenship education. For instance, how can universities strike a balance between specialization and a holistic education approach? How can we equip learners, all learners, both in the global north and the global south, for careers that do not yet exist? And should we integrate ethical, value-centric knowledge into the curriculum? And so in addressing these questions, the summit provided an excellent platform to explore themes of ethics, passion, sustainability, climate change, and AI in pedagogy and curriculum design. And so these discussions, at least in my opinion, are central to the evolving role of educational institutions in shaping ethical future leaders and global citizens. And I believe that topics such as global citizenship education, new technologies, media platforms, AI, climate anxiety in young people, even social justice, and contributions to the common good are part of an interconnected web of challenges and opportunities. And if discussed critically and ethically, they hold the potential to make our planet, and I use planet on purpose, more just and sustainable. And so based on the highlights I've shared with you so far, let me outline what you can expect from today's webinar. So first, I will explain what ethical global citizenship education for sustainability is, drawing from my recent published Ethical Global Citizenship Education in Cambridge University Press. And then after the presentation, I will answer your questions about my line of work. So first of all, what is global citizenship education? According to UNESCO, global citizenship education focuses on developing the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that learners need to contribute to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful world. Ethical global citizenship education for sustainability is a reflective educational framework that promotes ethical principles such as fairness, equality, compassion, and integrity, along with foundational knowledge. It aims to develop students' local and global understanding, self-awareness, cross-cultural compassion, accountability for achieving the common good, both domestically and internationally, a readiness to speak out, and particularly agency, or what I call active involvement in addressing key issues of shared local and global concern, along with fostering human values like empathy and unity towards sustainability. So ethical global citizenship education for sustainability represents a pedagogical approach through which educators make a distinct commitment to the liberation of the human spirit towards critical and social justice concepts. And so the concept of a global ethic informs and inspires ethical global citizenship education for sustainability. Specifically, the term ethical within ethical global citizenship education for sustainability directs attention to all the dimensions of the teaching learning environment and student experience, encompassing 5 dimensions, as you can see on the screen: critical, cosmopolitan, humanistic, value creating, and transformative. And so, as illustrated in this figure, each dimension presents a series of principles, or what I call pedagogical pathways, for teaching and learning within global citizenship education for sustainability. In this webinar today, given the time constraints, I will focus on 5 key elements of ethical global citizenship education for sustainability: decolonialism, caring ethics, eco-critical views, global moral consciousness, and humanity empowerment. Let me now discuss these 5 key elements. Let me address the first element, decolonialism. Ethical global citizenship education for sustainability promotes decoloniality and diversity rather than neutral, universal subjectivities. By this, I mean that we must develop in our learners what I call hyper self-reflexivity, with a pedagogical focus on dissensus that would assist learners in dealing with complexity and paradox. Some of my colleagues would call this developing critical thinking. Let me address the second element, caring ethics. Ethical global citizenship education for sustainability promotes the concept of caring ethics while encouraging learners to care for individuals and the human rights as a foundational pillar. And so from this angle, ethical global citizenship education for sustainability represents a pursuit of holistic education encompassing outcomes that include spirituality, art, aesthetics, politics, and ethics, as well as ambitions towards the creation of peace, in line with the UNESCO Commission report of Jacques Delors titled Learning the Treasure Within. And this emphasizes the importance of living in harmony with one another and with the rest of the planet. Let me now address the third element, eco-critical perspective. Ethical global citizenship education for sustainability encourages ecological consciousness and supports learners to examine the injustice created by humanity's perception that it is the supreme being on earth. By swapping out ego for eco, we can move the focus away from a human-centric attitude. Let me repeat this because it is core within ethical global citizenship education. By swapping out ego for eco, we can move the focus away from a human-centric attitude. And therefore, one of the objectives of the ethical global citizenship education for sustainability is to foster in our learners what I define eco-ethical consciousness that considers the environmental and social impact caused by human decisions effectively indivisible. Let me now address the fourth element, global moral consciousness. So the global moral consciousness element of ethical global citizenship education for sustainability I discuss in this webinar with you today encompasses the cultivation of a type of humanistic consciousness that transcends national, ethnic, geographic, and even religious boundaries. And so this approach consists of an awareness of others' perspectives, a single humanity as the primary level of community, and a moral consciousness to act for the good of the planet. It also encompasses elements of autonomy and carefulness. And so, from this perspective, I propose a vision of ethical global citizenship education for sustainability as being modes of thought and action with the basis in the connection of humanity with autonomy and carefulness. Autonomy herewith does not mean that the student or the learner is separate from society. Rather, it involves educators cultivating the students' relationships with others, and their support must develop the student appreciation for the notion of carefulness towards the other. And here the other as a capital O. This specifically refers to the influence of the individual situation. It proposes that it is possible to be responsible for one's personal life and philosophy with humanity as a foundation that allows all learners, not only those who are white and rich and located in the global north, hypothetically at least, to improve their human potential by reflection and dialogue and acquiring the necessary resources for living a worthwhile life based on the notion of carefulness, living in harmony with others on the basis of a moral code, or what I call ethical code, and assisting others in living valuable lives. Lastly, let me address the fifth element, empowering humanity. I do believe that empowering humanity requires ethical global citizenship education for sustainability to open a path for the personal improvement of every learner, again, not only those white, rich, and located in the global north. And so from this angle, empowering humanity through ethical global citizenship education embraces all aspects of human behavior. It emphasizes an interpersonal dimension which recognizes the human drive to live harmoniously and responsibly with others. I therefore believe that the type of global citizenship education we need today and in the future is ethically oriented. It fosters in our learners ethical and critical knowledge and values based on 5 key elements: decolonialism, caring ethics, eco-critical views, global moral consciousness, and humanity empowerment. At least these are the elements I'm discussing today. And so in this webinar today, I suggest that ethical global citizenship education for sustainability in its ethical essence raises questions not only about the meaning of global citizenship and global citizenship education themselves, it also brings into view matters of the purposes of education and the kind of human beings that education, particularly higher education, since today I'm delivering this webinar in a well-known university in Malaysia, and the responses that education and higher education seeks to develop in the 21st century, the era of globalization. Particularly, although not limited, in relation to the responses of education and higher education to neoliberal globalization and what we mean by ethical values and knowledge in higher education and education overall. Thank you for listening, and I'm delighted to answer the questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Bosio, for your comprehensive insightful, informative, and thought-provoking
Thank you.
presentation on ethical global citizenship education for sustainability. Your insights on the 5 key elements of the ethical global citizenship education, such as decolonialism, the eco-critical views, career ethics, global moral consciousness, and empowering humanities, have provided us with a powerful lens through which we can reflect on ourselves, on the education's role in shaping a more just and sustainable future. Well, I think we should move to another segment, which is more interactive segment, which is also known as a Q&A session, Doctor. There are a couple of questions raised by our students from Bachelor of Political Science in OUM, or in Open University Malaysia.
Excellent.
I pick up the most three important questions that was sent by my students. First of all, the first question sent by my students is, in what ways can ethical global citizenship education empower our students to become more active political agents in the democratic processes and sustainability policy making at local, national, and even global levels?
Okay, so this is a great question. Ethical global citizenship education seeks to cultivate critical awareness, moral responsibility, and civic engagement, particularly enabling students to question injustices, participating in democratic processes, and also, I should say, this is an important element, advocating for sustainable policies, which is what we need in nowadays educational systems and institutions. Specifically, an ethically oriented global citizenship education nurtures skills, important as they are, but also values. Values such as ethical reasoning, dialogue, collective action, which is at the end of the day agency, with the aim of empowering learners to influence decisions that affect their communities and the planet. And I want to emphasize here that agency is very, very important. Probably you had the chance to watch some of the video interviews in the Global Citizenship Education interview series. And recently I had this very interesting conversation with Mike Berners-Lee, who is the author of the very popular book, There Is Not Planet B. And the title already suggests the importance of an ethically oriented global citizenship education. So Mike and I agreed that without action by young people in 10 years from now, we could expect environmental catastrophes, the light of which we never seen before. And this is not just to be extreme and to, scare people. It's the reality based on Mike's studies, 20 years of studies in the field of climate and climate change. But it also my perspectives as an educator who has been working in global citizenship for more than 10 years by now. Because what I've seen is that young learners, students, have an immense potential. What they need is a platform, indeed an ethical global citizenship education, at least as I conceptualize it, a platform, an ethically oriented platform oriented towards developing their courage to speak out, to take action, and to understand that their lives are valuable and they can make a difference. So what the young learners, youth in general, lack today, and this is not entirely their fault, I should say that probably is not their fault at all, is the fault of how our society is organized, the current educational system, all geared and focused on test taking, preparing students for the international job market, important as it is, but much less focused on themes related to sustainability, ethical values, And we see that. We see that in our leadership. They are not able to sit together and engage in a dialogue and to put an end to the massacres and death that is happening in Gaza, is happening in Ukraine, and in other areas worldwide, which are not that popular on the news, but still we have ongoing conflicts. And the origins of this conflict are strongly interconnected on how we educate young people. And so, if we're not giving them an ethically oriented platform, which I call ethical global citizenship education, and we don't equip them with the values, ethical values, to develop what what you just heard in this presentation: empathy towards others, respect toward others, understanding of cultural differences, then we will keep going, and then we would just be basically heading towards big and unpleasant surprises. And we're talking about climate, talking about ongoing conflicts, lack of dialogue, and so on. So coming back to the origin of the question, agency here becomes central in the democratic process. We also need to bring in, as I mentioned, the discussion on decolonialism. Why? Because in the question, this very brilliant student of yours talks about democratic processes, but what type of democracy we are talking about? Is it like a Western only democracy? Or is it democracy that embraces cultural differences, embraces diversity, sits down and understands indigenous knowledge, understands concepts that are different from what we've been always taught in westernized institutions? And so if it's all embracing holistic type of democracy, which respects others, then the democratic process is a real process. Otherwise, it's just a fake process where you're talking about democracy, but you are trying to impose your own understanding of democracy. And unfortunately, what we are seeing today is that this approach doesn't work. And so I hope this answers the question. We want to have an ethically oriented platform which engages young learners in dialogues about diversity, offers the skills and the values they need to take collective action to contribute to the common good. This is what we want, really.
That is so insightful. The values, the platforms, the advocates, the youngster, the political agents need to advocate on the sustainability. They need to understand the values of ethical. When we talk about democracy, what kind of democracy are we talking about?
Exactly.
What democracies that we need to integrate to our younger generation, the political agents of the futures? Okay, now moving on to the second question. How does ethical global citizenship education intersect with political ideologies such as liberalism, socialism, and or even environmental justice movement?
Okay, let me say that your students are brilliant. Very interesting questions. So first of all, let me emphasize one point. As I was reading these questions, the second question, there is a word, ideologies. Ideologies came to have a sort of a negative connotation, but in my opinion, ideology has a great connotation because it speaks to ideals. It speaks to dreaming about a different type of society, and so it shouldn't be, put in a corner as a negative or interpreted as a negative word. Let me say this first and foremost. Secondly, to answer the full question, ethical global citizenship education that definitely intersects with political ideals of social justice. For example, in my webinar, you heard that I was talking about emphasizing shared human values like equity and ecological sustainability. We can't talk about global citizenship education if we do not embrace the local and the global. One mistake that my young learners make when they come to class and start learning about this notion of global citizenship education, they think that it's just a focus on the global. Actually, one of the merits of global citizenship education, if discussed ethically and critically, is to bring back on the table the important connection between the local community and the global community in terms that first he emphasizes the shared human values, because even though you are based in Malaysia and I'm currently based in Tokyo in Japan, at the end of the day we are both human beings, and we could potentially create enormous value if we understand each other, respect each other, and engage in a dialogue that aims at contributing to the common good. So social justice, human values like equity and ecological sustainability. We do not live in isolation. That's why I'm talking about shifting from ego to eco, which means that we should really stop using the word world. Although I like it, I have no problem with that, but we should start thinking of planetarian citizenship. The reason why I'm emphasizing this is that planet is more inclusive because it embraces humans and non-humans. And because we do not live in isolation, if we're not learning how to respect our environment, trees around us, rivers, streams, sea, any form of animals, anything that is not humans has the same, absolutely the same value for us as human beings as other humans. And so we not only need to learn to empathize with humans, we also need to learn to empathize with non-humans. And so that's why the notion of planetarian is very, very important in this discussion on ethical global citizenship education. In fact, with my colleague, Carlos Alberto Torres, we are now working on a paper called Ethical Global Citizenship Education as a Planetary Ethics, which means that we want to bridge the notion of global citizenship education to the notion of planetary ethics. Why? Because we realize that without bringing in a discussion on non-humans, this pedagogical platform remains without a leg. Because, as I said, we are surrounded by non-humans. And if we keep not respecting and empathizing with non-humans, then as Mike Berners-Lee said in my interview series, in 10 years from now, we could certainly expect bad surprises from the environment, which means tsunami, which means earthquakes, which means natural disasters, the like of which we never seen before. Having said that, there is another aspect to complete my answer to this very interesting question. Question 2 is that global citizenship education from an ethical perspective, at least as I discuss it in my books and peer-reviewed publications, scientific publications, aligns with ideals of human rights and peace education, democratic participation. It also, as I outlined a while ago, it aligns and resonates with critiques of inequality and environmental justice. So you could imagine ethical global citizenship education as an umbrella term, connecting the dots, trying to embrace these disciplines, political ideas, peace ideals, social justice movements ideals, calling these dimensions, these other disciplines to really work toward a systemic, what I called in some of my books, systemic transformation, not only of education, but eventually of how we conceptualize society, because ethical global citizenship education is also a sociological, politically oriented platform. It doesn't only embrace pedagogy, education, in the true sense of education or as a faculty of education. It could easily embrace discussions in a faculty of politics and sociology, because it is connected to systemic transformation on the way we think, the way we approach societies, and eventually the type of leadership we want to foster in the future moving forward. The current leadership is visibly not educated to bring peace. It's just educated to, to discuss the GDP, to discuss economy, money, and business. These are elements of the society that, I'm not saying that should be completely, deleted by the discussion on what does it mean to create an happy society, but they should be harmonized within the discussion of having a society that is ethically oriented and based on sustainability. And I think this completes my answer to this second question.
Wow, that is good. Because from your answers that it made me think one of the things that when we talk about global citizenship education, people only think about global. But actually, we should think of more than just global, in which I think many scholars did mention that is globalization, global plus local. So localization. This is one thing that I agree with you absolutely on that. And the last part of the answer just now is about the peace. Yes, people are talking about GDP. People are talking about poverty. People are talking about the conflict, this and that. But if without peace, there is no poverty. If without peace, we cannot talk. There is no peace. There is no poverty, this and that. In which I absolutely agree with you. And come to our final question, which is why should ethical global citizenship be viewed as a form of soft power in international relations?
So first of all, let me stress one point about what you just said, because it's very, very important. The connection between the local and the global is something that is at the core of the discussion of global citizenship education when it's discussed from the perspective that I share with you today in this webinar, from an ethical and critical perspective. So that's very important, because as I said before, one of the merits of global citizenship education is to bring back on the table this discussion about the importance of agency and local community and how this relates to the global in terms of education, society, politics, and so on. So this is important to be repeated and emphasized. In terms of my answer to question 3, which again is another great question from your student, because it speaks to soft power, which is a term that I really like. Ethical global citizenship education at the core values solidarity, values cooperation, sustainability across borders, which means embracing both the global north and the global south. If you're interested in understanding how scholars, educators understand the global citizenship education from the global south perspective, I would strongly encourage you and the students to read my book with Youssef Wagdid from South Africa, the book called Global Citizenship Education in the Global South, which is a collection of chapters written by scholars based actually in the Global South. Coming back to my answer, what ethical global citizenship education as an ethical platform does is really to bring back discussions on the importance of dialogue. I want to really close my answer to this third and final question with emphasizing the importance of dialogue. Dialogue is itself a soft power, and dialogue is itself key to international relations. We see that the lack of dialogue produces an enormous amount of death, which is explicated, manifested in war conflicts. In fact, the extreme of a lack of dialogue is equal to an armed conflict, a war conflict. So when nations sit around the table once, then they do it twice, then they do it the third time, and then they don't find solutions, and then they believe that their interests are not respected, then is where a war generally starts. That means that those who were supposed to have fruitful and engaged and empathetic dialogues failed to do so. And the reasons why they failed, it's difficult. We could speak for 3-4 days, not only 30-40 minutes. But fundamentally, it goes back to our leadership, because at the end of the day, it's one person. It doesn't take so many people to, at the end of the day, to launch a global conflict, a World War III. It takes a handful of incapable leaders who are not been educated to engage in meaningful dialogue to launch a global conflict that potentially erases humanity from Earth. So if you think of that, you also think of how important it is dialogue, how important it is to foster young future leaders who are really, really interested in protecting humans and non-humans, because we shouldn't forget that the news keep reporting about loss of lives, of human lives, but they do not so frequently report about the loss of the ecology, trees, rivers polluted by weapons, potential viruses, potential, the extension could be really enormous, the damage that is created to non-humans. And so, you're not only losing lives among humans, you're losing a lot of lives among non-humans and the environment, which already suffering by the fact that, as I mentioned in my presentation, we are fundamentally human-centric. So, in closing, to complete my answer to this final question, soft power is itself concerned with dialogue, and dialogue is concerned with soft power and international relations. So one of the most important elements I always emphasize in my papers, in my books, is the dialogic dimension that an ethically oriented global citizenship education should teach to all learners, and encourage a reflexive dialogue, which means not only speaking and respecting the other, but also the ability to listen to the other. But listening to the other doesn't mean that you just listen. It means that it requires an effort to really empathize with the perspective of the other, because in some cases it's really challenging to understand others' perspectives, because they are diverse, they are different. They bring in perhaps perspectives that are uncomfortable for us, or they are new to us. And generally speaking, human beings don't like to engage with diversity and things that are new, because it requires an effort. And nowadays, we are so bombarded by social media that our minds become easily lazy, right? I guess you probably have the same feeling. And so, it becomes difficult to read the book. It becomes difficult to engage in a dialogue with your family members. It becomes difficult to develop an interest in social issues, both locally and globally. It becomes difficult to take action for the common good, because at the end of the day, everything becomes easily accessed by your phone or by your tablet. And so, there will be another whole discussion related to how to contrast this, I could call it impoverishment of our critical consciousness by the current societal system aimed at controlling young people. They are not really interested in fostering critical minds. They are more interested in fostering individuals who follow the rules, who follows the what has been told them. They are much less interested at the moment, at least, although ethically oriented platforms like Global Citizenship Education try to go in the opposite direction. But there is not, if you look around, there is not a strong interest in fostering critically conscious global citizens. There is more an interest in fostering human resources, job ready for the international job market, indeed. So, these are all elements that should also be discussed and help our learners to become critically aware of it, so they can at least try their best to contribute to the common good. And with this, I will close because I believe he addresses the last question.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Dr. Bosio, for your enlightening responses to each and every questions. I think there are total about 3 questions that you have answered it very, very insightful.
Thank you.
I believe it benefits all our learners as well as our viewers over here. And your perspective has deepened our understanding and sparked the meaningful reflections. And I think the time is quite running out. Okay, and we shall bring this session to a close.
Thank you.
Once again, Dr. Bosio, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to you for your time, for your commitment, for your scholarship, and also for your inspiring sharing session with us in this webinar. And to all our participants out there, thank you for being with us today. And until we meet again in our next intellectual gathering, stay informed, stay compassionate, stay empathy, and stay committed to a global change. With that note, thank you. And I see you again in the coming session.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you and bye-bye.